Hi, my name is George Marrero, and today we'll be looking at internet privacy. To begin with, as technology continues to develop, the privacy of the user has shown to decrease. With technology continuing to grow and grow, there are now new softwares and new ways for people such as hackers and smaller companies to place bugs on certain websites to pull information from the user, therefore being able to sell that information and leaking it out into the public. Social media platforms and large companies are mainly raising the skepticism in users about what happens to their data. For example, Zoom was recently had a lawsuit on them because they were found to be giving information after a user logged into the Zoom to Facebook, and the users of Zoom were not notified about this. Later on, Zoom did put out that they deleted this part of their software and that they would no longer be doing this. The skepticism causes users to feel very uncomfortable, and because of this, it can cause them to not use these platforms, and for business to not have these customers come back because they do not feel comfortable putting their personal information on these smaller websites that have the possibility of doing very bad things with their information and putting it out there to the public. Now, before we continue, I'd like to show a quick clip of a TED Talk by Danelle Dixon, who is a Chief Business and Legal Officer at Mozilla on online privacy.
No, what I'm afraid of is that unknown villain, that person making anonymous threats, that company that I've never heard of, or that stranger that has unbelievable amounts of data about me and my family.
This is just one example of how an individual might think when they're accessing a website that they do not feel comfortable with, and what the thought process is when they feel like they're giving away their information to someone who has malicious intent with that information. Next, we'll be looking at some statistics from research conducted by the Pew Research Center. In the first one, they asked participants how they felt about their lack of control, if the risk outweigh the benefits, concerns over data use, and lack of understanding about data usage. And what was found is that the majority of Americans feel as if they have little control over the data. And this is what's wrong with how the companies are going about using the data of these individuals. The companies are not letting these individuals know what is going on with the data. Therefore, since the individuals know that the data is being given out to some extent somewhere else but are not being notified about it, it gives them stuff like concerns over the data use, and that the risk outweigh the benefits, because although there may be some benefits to it, that the companies give the information out to other companies for usage to update their software or whatever the case might be, the risk of not knowing what is going on with that data is the issue that is going on, and that is what is being shown by the first figure. In the second figure, we see that most Americans are not confident that companies will publicly admit to the misuse of the consumers' data. Now, this just goes to show us that users of websites, of smaller websites that have higher risk, and of larger companies and stuff like that, they don't have that trust that they need in a consumer to be able to just continue to purchase on the website and just feel comfortable using the website and sharing their personal information on that website. Because even if these companies were to give out the data, the users do not feel that they would publicly come out and actually admit that they have been using the data for stuff that was not consented to by these consumers. And this mistrust can lead to loss of the business, having a lot of consumers not purchase from that website because they're not comfortable and they don't know what is actually going on with their data. In addition, we will now be looking at a global and ethical analysis of internet privacy. For the global analysis, we'll be comparing the United States laws versus the Chinese laws. To begin with, in the US, issues with internet privacy occur to the dishonesty and secrecy of websites and companies. As I had previously mentioned, the main issue with internet privacy in the United States is that companies are very dishonest and are not transparent with their user on what is going on with the personal information. For example, they sell the information to third parties without the consent of the user, which is a very big issue. However, in a country like China, the rules are much stricter. because it follows the strictest privacy law in the world, the GDPR, which was initially set up by Europe. China is itself already a very strict country as it regulates what public media outlets can report. They can only report things that the state has already reported. They are not able to actually voice their own opinions on the government because they don't want things to affect national and state interests. So China itself is already a very strict government, so that is already completely different than the United States. The US privacy laws are much more lenient than those in China because the US does not follow the same privacy laws that China does. It is obviously going to be a lot more lenient because China follows the strictest version of it. The laws in China are more meant to keep the government safe rather than the individual safe. However, in the United States, I think it is the opposite. The individual is cared a lot more than the government is. However, the rules need to be a little bit stricter in order to fully secure the safety of the user on the websites and keep their personal information safe. Next, we'll be looking at the ethical analysis. With this, after much research, Confucianism is what best applies to internet privacy issues, because Confucianism focuses on just regular human morals and just being a good human being. The Golden Rule, which is part of Confucianism, perfectly describes why internet privacy should be such a big matter. Do unto others as you would want to be done unto you. Now, this is something that large companies do not take into account because the individuals at these large companies that are using this information are not thinking about how this could also affect them. How, if somebody were to take their information and leak it, would they be okay with it? Would they be fine with all their personal information being out there in the public? This is something that large corporations need to do, and they should put themselves in the user's shoes in order to really understand why the privacy is such a big deal to them. Now, before we conclude, we will now be looking at some counter arguments that some individuals believe against internet privacy. The first would be that individuals should only be worried about their privacy if they have something to hide. This is something that is completely false because what one individual might believe to be something they want to keep private, another individual might not. That is why privacy is to an extent subjective to the individual. Next is that individuals accepted the terms and agreements when making their account on a website. Now, this is a little bit more understandable because in these agreements they do mention all the privacy policies that they have and what might happen to an individual's information. However, these terms and agreements are usually very long lists of information that a person who wants to make a simple account would not read. Therefore, they are not going to know all the terms and conditions that they are accepting. Because of this, companies should make a big disclaimer right before an individual creates an account about what can happen with their information with that company and what the company would possibly do with that person's personal data. Overall, as technology continues to increase and develop over time, it would make it a lot easier for individuals and companies to pull information from others. Due to this, privacy laws should also be changing along with technology in order to ensure the safety of individuals' information. The privacy of online users has been invaded by companies and smaller businesses on the internet, which causes the users to feel unsafe and threatened. This uncertainty brought upon by the companies and smaller businesses pulling information from individuals actually hinders individuals from expressing themselves on these platforms and feeling safe and comfortable to use these platforms to a certain extent because they don't know what will happen with their personal information that they would love to keep private. And finally, by using the ethical approach of Confucianism, the dishonesty and non-transparency by these companies onto their users would certainly be deemed unethical, because they are being dishonest and not following basic human morals and pulling information from these individuals without their consent and invading their privacy, which is completely wrong. Thank you.